How are you?
I'm good. What's going on?
What's going on with you? How's baby?
No, honestly.
Can I sit here? Okay.
I'm going in the room because you had any documents and stuff that I had.
That's so big.
I know, it's crazy.
Oh my God. So cute.
It's almost a year old.
Oh, wait, when is his birthday again? July?
July 17th.
Okay. Leo season.
You're fine.
Good. How are you?
1 second, I gotta do double duty.
I didn't know the price were being first. I would have gone rollerblading and then come over here. I had them in my car. I was ready to go.
Oh my God, you got all that news like that. Rollerblade, I don't know. Oh, he loves this. He told you he loves it. We gotta give it to
Yeah.
him.
Can we get like a rubber one?
Again, welcome to the welcome to the ordinance hearing, ordinance meeting. I'd like to have a motion to take items number 2.
Can we do a roll call first?
Oh, yes, forgot about us being with you.
Madam Clerk, can I have a roll call?
Chairman Narducci,
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Castillo is absent. Councilwoman Harris,
Present.
Councilor Miller,
Present.
Councilman Espinal is absent. You have 3 present and 2 absent. You have a quorum.
At this time, I'd like to have a motion to take item number 2 and 3 out of order.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman
Second.
Miller, second by Councilman Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
And with that being said, can we set up item number 2 and item number 3 for a public hearing, Madam Clerk?
Yes, can we have a motion
Can I
for
have a
that?
motion
So moved.
by Councilman Miller,
Second.
seconded by Councilwoman Harris, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 1. Again, I'm going to ask Sean to briefly touch base on item number 1.
Item number 1 is an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 14 licenses of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Providence to add Article 17 neighborhood events. Mr. Chair, we do have to enter the letter of opposition into the record again for this meeting.
We can't use it as Exhibit A because we used it as.
No, we can use it as Exhibit A.
I have a motion to accept the letter as Exhibit A.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Councilman Miller, seconded by Councilman Harris, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, Sean, again, just touch base briefly on what this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sean Bouchard, Deputy Chief of Staff and Director of Policy for the City Council. The ordinance you have before us is the neighborhood events. The intent of the ordinance is to standardize the procedure by which the city offers reduced rates for city services for special events within the city, organized by local community organizations and nonprofits. So this sets out not just the reduced costs that the city will provide, but the procedure by which you can obtain that. So instead of simply hoping for some sort of invoice from the city as to what you're going to be charged, the way this will proceed is that the individuals who are seeking to provide a local neighborhood event can petition the city. They will go through the standard procedure as normal through arts, culture, and tourism, outline the full array of services needed. But then we're going to add an additional layer for them to actually have a public forum for neighborhood members to actually be able to attend a hearing and see the action that takes place by the city when it comes to considering a petition to have a reduced cost. And so at the open meeting, the fully compliant open meeting of the Board of Licenses will be provided the ability to provide reduced services, reduced rates for city services at these events. The services themselves, the costs are outlined in section 14.341, which will basically say that the city will waive any charge to the applicant outside of the hard costs incurred by the city. So for instance, with the police detail, whatever the cost of the officer is to the city, that's what we will be passing an invoice over to the applicant for. Again, it's a layer for public scrutiny to actually witness the decisions of the city when it comes to charging these types of events, and also hopefully to spur a little dialogue between the event organizers and the local community to hear some of the concerns and hopefully work with the community to be good neighbors and to provide a little bit more of an understanding of what services might be needed as the events move on. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but I think that's as quick an overview as I can provide.
Thank you, Director Bouchard. Committee members.
I do have a question for the policy.
Councilman Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Usually my constituents, I'm gonna speak on the ones that I usually deal with. They have an event coming up. And for some reason, they hold off coming to us and asking for, whatever, our blessings on it or whatever, a process. What we did, I guess, under the other ordinance is go before the arts and culture, and they had like a meeting, I guess. I have never attended. I know our staff have been really great at providing that for us. In this case, if someone was getting to, I'm gonna use an example. I had a call today, someone wants to have an event on the 25th. Now, the process that we have now, can you tell me, how would that work for decision-making?
Certainly. So I'll start from just kind of the beginning when it comes to special events in general, right? As you heard the public hearing, there are other ordinances that govern special events. This is an additional layer up above and beyond what already exists. This is not to replace, this is simply to add an additional provision. The standard process as it currently exists through the city when it comes to arts, culture, and tourism, managing the applications, the intake, the coordination of city services, the decision-making on what services may or may not be needed, that procedure will not be touched. That will stay the same.
Okay.
The alteration that's occurring, again, is not to remove any of the procedure that currently exists, but to add an additional layer on the city that if the city decides that we want to provide reduced rates to an event, we have to do it through a public forum at the board of licenses. The reason that it lives in the board of licenses, I think is important to understand as well. As much as arts, culture, and tourism, it's not a knock on them at all. They're a fantastic organization, do great work within the city. However, the board of licenses is a charter board. It is part of the board of it's within the charter for boards and commissions that will remain permanently in the event the administration changes over and decides arts, culture, and tourism is going to be renamed or reconstituted or moved. The board of licenses is a required entity. And so this requirement for waiving fees will never be touched in any procedure, even if a new administration was to come in and decide that arts, culture, and tourism is going to be rebranded and we're going to do a different procedure. So I think that's important to know. The other thing I do just want to flag for the committee as well. You had one example. There's another example that does pop up from time to time is the arts, culture, and tourism. They go through the whole review process with an organization and say, okay, this is the parameters, we're going to do these streets with these officers, this is what's going to happen. And, get all the approvals, and a couple days beforehand, the organization, maybe not even through any fault of their own, but they just get more interest than they thought, they want to expand. Well, this provision says very explicitly, we really need to know well in advance what we're getting into from the city services, and this reduced rate will only apply to what goes through that arts, culture, and tourism review, so that in the event services are sprung on the city last minute, right, with, police, fire, DPW, they're all organizing their, weekly shifts to make sure they have personnel available. If they all of a sudden need to relocate officers or relocate personnel, we need to be able to charge that additional cost because it's being sprung last minute and there may be, overhead costs for the city even above and beyond what we planned for. So it's a way to try and get the cooperation early on. A lot of the successful events that we have in the city are exceptionally good at this. It will not impact them, but it's a way for us to try and get that dialogue started early. And again, having a public forum to me, I think is a very important aspect of this ordinance. That way, if neighbors have issues, we can try and work those out in advance. So that way they are able to be accommodated as much as possible. And if they aren't, the city has a hook then to work with the organizers to really try and get that compliance, in addition to just the normal course of business.
Thank you, that was helpful. Thank you, Ms.
What's that?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Council, what's that?
Yeah, I would just add, thank you, Sean, very much. I guess two things. One about this and one about some of the, I want to thank everyone who came and testified tonight also. I want to speak to another hand first. So coming out during COVID, the city was offering events like this, the governor was doing Take It Outside. It was all happening at cost to the city. So the police, the fire, the various inspectors for all those events that happened during COVID were at a cost to the city. So coming, we're not out of COVID, but we're in this new phase, right? Coming out of that, this creates a public process that's available to everyone. Instead of some folks sort of trying to say like, oh, well, it was free before, why can't it continue to be free? Right now, there's a process by which people can just go publicly to ask for these costs, and that's really all it's working with. So it's really singularly focused, sunsetted appropriately to when ARPA funds sunset, specifically focused on, because those bills are coming, right? Like how are we providing these services at cost for police and for fire? We're not gonna make any money on these events, we're not gonna lose any money on these events. So that's all this ordinance touches. Chairman, can I express some other things not on this topic, or would you like to move on this topic first?
I would allow that, Council.
Thank you. So I just want to take a moment and also say the comments tonight in terms of trash and some of the other impacts, not just of special events, but of like quality of life impacts that we're seeing in the neighborhood are really well taken. So right now in Federal Hill, we have a city councilor, a state representative, and a state senator who are like constantly triaging a barrage of dumping, of speeding, of, the number of times I make the same request for city services over and over and over again is maddening. And so while it's not related to this at hand, I just want to thank the people who came tonight to express that
Yes.
and without screaming at all my colleagues, share that it is a really bad state of affairs, that we are talking about basic quality of life issues, that, at least partially, we're gonna keep making sure that there's revenue coming in for basic city services, because through this ordinance, right, we're not giving stuff away for free. But that doesn't begin to touch or be appropriate to the problem of maintaining basic city services. And
While we're on that little bit of a topic, just briefly, that's why in this budget, we made sure DPW, Department of Public Works, was fully funded to also appoint added positions to help us with this problem, because it's nothing more aggravating to us as city council people. When we call the director to have something done, and we get told it could be 3 days, it could be 5 days, but shorthanded, we don't want to hear that. We live in our wards. We're faced with the same situations the people we serve are faced with. And when you're on this side of it, it's really aggravating. And that's why that was one of the departments that we made sure as councils and the finance committee that was fully funded and are gonna be hiring and they're fully staffed moving forward. With that being said, because that's something we probably want all night, but with that being said, what I'm gonna ask is I'm gonna ask for a motion to pass this ordinance out of committee and send it to the council for a full vote.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Miller, seconded by Councilman Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank our clerks, as always. Sean, thank you. And I know we have another meeting upon the horizon this meeting, so but that one I don't have to be at. I'm going home and have it.
Are we in this room, Councilman?
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, yeah, let us out. Let us out of this.
Oh.
Adjourn us.
Yeah, that's what you want. Can I have a motion to adjourn by Councilwoman Hattie, seconded by Councilman Miller, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Councilman, are we in this room?
I would defer
Yes,
to
we
Tina on
are.
that.
Okay, then I.
Just give us a moment to
Chair.
clean
Sorry,
up.
make
So
it
you're
quick.
gonna do.
I'm worn out from Councilman.